In the last episode, Terry had pretty much completed his round trip from Adelaide to Alice Springs and back. Now, I want to share snippets or stories from the trip, and one of them today I want to talk about is the Ford Falcon that accompanied his Beetle. So Ford Falcon belonged to one of his friends, and there's quite a unique story about the Ford Falcon. So stay tuned to the very end of this video. You're going to enjoy it. So yeah, Terry, the Falcon, pretty interesting. But I thought, because that was your friend's vehicle, who now lives in the UK, how did you two become friends? Were you working together, or?
Well, we actually met in 1953.
Oh, right. Okay.
We were in the Royal Air Force together.
Right.
Doing an apprenticeship in what today you'll call electronics.
Yep.
But in those days we called it wireless and radar.
Right.
And he was a year older than me.
Right.
And in a different group of people.
Yep.
We used to call them entries. And we were both in the same athletics team.
Right.
That's where we met and became friends.
Okay.
He was a discus thrower. I was a race walker.
Right.
In the days when we used to walk.
Yeah.
not the jog stuff they do these days. And we became quite good friends through the athletics team. And then when he finished his apprenticeship, off he went to somewhere.
Yeah.
I know not where.
Yeah.
I finished mine. And then I came out, as I explained in the first chapter, I think, of this, I came out here to work on a thing called Fire Streak.
Correct.
And soon after, when that finished, some months later, I was transferred onto another project, which was for Joint Services Trials Unit, which was on a weapon called Blue Steel.
Right.
Which today you would call a cruise missile.
Right. So you're still in Australia for this one?
Still in Australia,
yeah.
At the same place at Weapons Research Establishment.
Right.
I was transferred onto Blue Steel, which was used to hang underneath the V bombers.
Right.
It was 10 meters long.
Yeah.
Weighed 6 ton.
Ooh.
And had an atomic warhead.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it was heavy artillery.
Yeah.
And we were just starting the trials on that, and various people were arriving with various skills from the UK.
Yep.
And amongst them was Nick Ward, my old friend from the athletics team in England.
So you reunited.
So we became immediate good friends. We lived in not very far apart, about 200 metres from my place to his place.
Yeah.
And I got the Volkswagen Beetle, and he'd had a Holden and he wanted a station wagon.
Right.
And he was fortunate enough to pick up a Falcon station wagon,
yep.
which was about 6 months old.
Yeah.
I think there was a migrant who wanted to go back to England and needed money because he hadn't been out here long enough to not pay the money back.
Yeah.
In those days, if you got a £10 package to come out to Australia.
Right.
But if you went back within a certain time, you had to pay your fare, well over £1,000 at the time. So this guy was desperate to sell this Falcon, which Nick bought.
Yep.
And we took on the trip to Alice Springs.
Now the Falcons, they came fully built from the US, is that right?
No, they came CKD, completely knocked down. The parts came from, they were building them in Melbourne at the Ford factory in Melbourne.
Right.
Or Geelong, actually, I think. And it seemed to be the ideal vehicle for that sort of trip.
Yeah.
Because it was 6-cylinder, big, and had a big capacity for passengers.
Yeah.
It would fit 3 across the front in a bench seat.
Yeah.
And would fit 3 across the back, so you could actually get 6 passengers in it.
Yeah,
and when you laid the back seat down, there was room to sleep.
Wow.
in the back.
Yeah.
So what we used to do is wind the back window down, then drop the tailgate,
Yeah.
and one of the couples, Nick and his wife Carol,
Yeah.
used to sleep in the Falcon.
Oh.
This caused a few problems after a while, because being an American designed vehicle, the tailgate wasn't very dustproof,
Right.
and it actually started filling up with dust.
Oh, wow.
And you couldn't wind the window down to drop the tailgate down.
Ah, okay. All that dust had collected.
All the dust had collected.
Yeah.
So we tried to wash it out,
Yeah.
and all we did was turn it into a solid concrete-like lump of clay,
Yeah.
which made it even harder. It was just impossible
Yeah.
to wind it down. So it was quite a problem for them to get into bed at night. and it wasn't that suited to dirt roads. It used to get bogged
Yeah.
much easier than the Volkswagen.
Yeah.
Although he might dispute that if he sees this video. And it was really not built for rough roads.
Right. Yeah.
And it just, by the time we got it back to Adelaide, the diff was whining really badly. The back suspension was all out of alignment.
Whoa.
The front suspension was all over the place, just wheels going in all directions.
Yeah.
Very difficult to drive. And he took it back to the Ford people.
Right.
And they said, "Where's this been?" And he told them. He said, "Oh, they said we've been looking for one like this."
Ah.
And they took it off him and gave him another car to drive.
Right.
And I think it was about a couple of 3 months later, they wrote to us or phoned us at work.
Yeah.
And said, "Your Falcon is ready."
Okay.
So he went to pick it up with his big checkbook, and they completely rebuilt it at no cost.
Oh, wow.
One of the big problems was the original first generation of Falcon,
Yeah.
where you've got the struts at the front.
Yeah.
Lift the bonnet, you've got two front struts.
Yeah.
There was no reinforcement between them and the firewall,
Right.
as there is now.
Yeah. Okay.
And they put reinforcing plates in there,
Right.
and it became a design fact from then onwards that all Falcons had reinforcement between the front suspension and the firewall.
Right. So that would have been more specific for Australian exports or exports to Australia.
Yes, yeah. Then, the back suspension, which is bolted to the axle,
Yeah.
the nuts had, apart from one, all the nuts had fallen off the bolts.
Whoa.
So it was actually only gravity holding the bolts and the back suspension together.
Unbelievable.
And it had shifted because of the lack of restraining bolts.
Yeah.
All the front ball joints and that were replaced.
Yeah.
They even replaced a tail light that was broken. So they really went to town on it, and they were very, very appreciative of the testing which we gave it.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have a test system
Yeah.
at that time themselves. So, but it got us through.
Yeah.
And of course it carried a lot of luggage which
Yeah.
which the Beetle wouldn't carry.
Yes. And
and four people.
yes, yes. And that's the thing. I think that's one of the reasons why Australian off-road accessories products are still very renowned all over the world, because we got the harshest conditions to try them out in.
That's right. That's right. Even with those conditions, things still break.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. That's fantastic. This part I wanted to just talk about that Falcon story, because you had told me about it before. It was fascinating. And that's the whole thing. And that's why I love this series and having these conversations with you, because we are, and I said this in the very first part, I think, where, we are in a very safety bubble when we go bush. Whereas in in the 60s, there was no such thing, but you still had good fun, you had that adventure, and
absolutely.
you came back.
Yeah.
So it's nice to go back, and that sometimes, when I travel, sometimes remote, I sometimes tend to carry more than what's necessary. That's because I'm getting a bit paranoid, you could say. Whereas when you think about it, and when you did it, you didn't know what to expect, you didn't carry much, but you still did it because you were a lot more sensible.
Yeah.
And did it. Yeah, so fantastic. Well, thank you, Terry. I really appreciate that, and I'm sure the viewers loved that, especially Ford owners and Beetle owners. I loved it, and everybody else in general. So thanks for sharing that, Terry, and I'm sure we can do a few more sessions with you. We've got a whole wealth of experience from over the years, so thank you for that. And for those of you who've been watching, I hope you've been enjoying it. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, tell everyone else about it, and share as much as you like. If you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe. My whole channel is about sharing my overlanding experiences and those of others like Terry's with the rest of the community. So thanks for watching, and another video out next week, some form of overlanding video. Thanks for watching, everyone.